Good evening, everyone. We'll call to order this regular meeting of the Willows City Council for Tuesday, September 10th, 2024. Item 2 on our agenda this evening, our Pledge of Allegiance. If you please stand for the pledge. Councilmember Bodden, would you do the honors, lead us in the pledge, please? Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
Item 3, roll call. City Clerk Amos Hoover, please.
Councilmember Thomas,
Here.
Councilmember Bodden. Here. Councilmember Sprague is absent illness tonight, and Vice Mayor Hudson
Present.
and Mayor Hanson.
Here.
Everyone's present or accounted for, sir.
Thank you, Amos. Before we move on tonight, I'd like to ask my colleagues in the council, city staff, and our audience members to partake in a moment of silence for a beloved, very recent former member of the City of Willows team, Christina Hudson, who unexpectedly passed away recently. Christina was a marvelous person all the way around. She was the recreation manager here for a number of years, did outstanding work. Not only that, but she also found the time to assist every member of the city team in any way possible at any time. And we couldn't, she just, I don't know of a better person, actually. Christina, just marvelous. So if we'd please partake in a moment of silence in Christina's memory. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen. May Christina rest in peace and God bless her family and Christina. Item 4, changes to the agenda. City Manager Marty Brown. Good evening, Marty.
Good evening. If it pleases the council, I was going to maybe recommend that we move item 8C, 2024 Community Development Block Grant Project Application to the top of the discussion items. Right, make it 8A and then CAL FIRE Rural Grant, 8B, and the retail cannabis business, 8C. That's
Yeah, very good, Marty. So noted. We will, we'll hear 8C first. Thank you, Marty. Any further changes?
no, there are no.
Okay, thank you. Item 5, ceremonial matters. We have 3 proclamations this evening. Item 5A, we have a proclamation for Patriots Day, and I will be honored to read that proclamation at this time. City of Willows Proclamation, Patriot Day, a day to remember. Whereas the unprovoked attacks of September 11th, 2001 upon America by foreign terrorists thrust the United States and other countries into a war that it never envisioned militarily or diplomatically. And whereas the challenges facing all the civilized people of the world as they relate to the war on terrorism will not end until those fanatics responsible are eliminated or brought to justice. And whereas America is fully committed to ensure our freedoms remain unfettered and sovereign for all generations, now and forever. And whereas world opinion needs to remain focused upon the eradication of these inhuman acts perpetrated around the globe. And whereas one way to accomplish this is to never forget that those innocent victims did not die in vain. And whereas America can continue to fight back by reminding the world that the deaths of these people will always be remembered and they will be forever loved. And whereas a noble and appropriate way to accomplish this is through the annual celebration of their living. And whereas this commemoration should be held each September 11th throughout the land to include the promotion of global peace and goodwill, the demonstration of America's resolve and perseverance to win the war on terrorism, the advancement of responsible citizenship, the encouragement of patriotism and love of country, and the poignant remembrance of those innocent victims who died on September 11th as heroes, one and all. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Gary Hanson, Mayor of the City of Willows, on behalf of the City Council and the citizens of the City of Willows, issue this proclamation to memorialize those men, women, and children who lost their lives, and Be it further proclaimed that this proclamation be publicized for all to see and know that the citizens of Willows remember with eternal respect those lives which were suddenly, without cause, and pointlessly taken on September 11, 2001. May they forever rest in peace and abide in our memories. Proclaimed this 10th day of September 2024, Gary Hansen, Mayor. And Carol Lemonager is here tonight representing the VFW Auxiliary. And there may be other individuals in the audience as well. And Carol, I'd like to present this to you. Carol, will you be receiving the National POW MIA proclamation? Okay, we'll do them at the same time then. So thank you. Thank you. 9/11, yeah, tomorrow is the 11th. Okay, item ceremonial matter, item 5B, proclamation. City of Willows proclamation, National POW MIA Recognition Day. As we all know, POW stands for Prisoners of War and MIA, Missing in Action. Whereas in 1979, Congress passed a resolution authorizing the observance of National POW MIA Recognition Day. And whereas that national observance now takes place annually on the third Friday of September, this year on September 20th. And whereas throughout American history, generations of patriots bravely served in our military and sacrificed much to protect our country and preserve democracy around the world. And whereas some of those brave men and women who answered the call to service were captured in conflict and imprisoned by our enemies, some never returned from the battlefield. And whereas today and every day, we pay tribute to the American men and women who have not returned to the country they so valiantly defended, and we express profound gratitude to those who returned after facing unimaginable hardships. We will never forget the sacrifices they made to keep this nation free. And whereas observances of National POW MIA Recognition Day are held across the country on military installations, ships at sea, state capitals, veterans facilities, and whereas we urge the government of the United States to continue the quest to fully account for every service member still classified as missing. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, Gary Hansen, Mayor of the City of Willows, on behalf of the Willows City Council, do hereby declare September 20th, 2024 as POW MIA Recognition Day, never forgetting the sacrifices they made, proclaimed as 10th day of September 2024. Gary Hansen, Mayor. Carol. Thank you for attending tonight, everybody. Thank you very much. We have a third proclamation this evening, item 5C, proclamation library card sign up month. City of Willows proclamation library card sign up month. Whereas libraries are essential for the education and development of children, offering everything from preschool story times to college and career planning resources for high school students, nurturing literacy and a love for reading. And whereas libraries provide welcoming and inclusive spaces where individuals from all backgrounds can learn and connect, bridging cultural, ethnic, generational, and economic divides, and strengthening the social fabric of their communities. And whereas libraries are committed to creating and maintaining diverse programs and collections that reflect the communities they serve, ensuring equitable access for all. And whereas libraries assist people of all ages in navigating life's complexities, offering access to research, information, and government services that enhance productivity and fulfillment. And whereas libraries boost the local economy by providing critical access to technology and training for job seekers, entrepreneurs, and students. And whereas During times of crisis, libraries and their staff play a vital role in supporting communities, both in person and virtually. And whereas the shared resources provided by libraries help households save money, conserve resources, and reduce waste, offering a simple way to make a positive impact. And whereas a library card ignites creativity and empowers individuals to explore new interests and pursue lifelong learning. And whereas libraries uphold democracy by promoting civic engagement and the free exchange of information and ideas for all. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Gary Hansen, Mayor of the City of Willows, on behalf of the Willows City Council and the citizens of the City of Willows, proclaim September as Library Card Sign-Up Month and encourage everyone to sign up for a library card at the Willows Public Library today. Proclaimed this 10th day of September 2024, Gary Hansen, Mayor. And Jody Mays, our Library Director, is here tonight. Jody, good to see you. Thank you for being here. I'll present on behalf of the council and the citizens. Give a lot of time. Thanks again, Jody. Item 6, presentation. Item 6A, behavioral health services at Glenn Medical Center. We're going to receive a presentation on the new behavioral health outpatient clinic at Glenn Medical Center, and tonight presenting is Lauren Still, the Assistant Administrator of Glenn Medical Center. Lauren, thank you for being here tonight. And it looks like you have some very capable help as well.
I do. So with me is Jessica Bay. She's our community educator with our
Very good. Jessica.
psychiatric medical care. And first, thank you, council. Can you guys hear me? All right. I appreciate everybody's warm welcome. I appreciate your support and encouragement, and really from everybody in the community. It's been quite a process for me to come up to Glenn County, get to know the community, get to know the facilities, step into my new role, and I have a whole lot of hope for the future. I see the leadership of this council. I see the leadership of the board of supervisors. I see the leadership of everyone here, and I take a little bit of that and I bring it back to my facility. I've been fortunate enough to spend a lot of time listening, and today we get to show you the product of all that listening. So go ahead. So we are partnering with Psychiatric Medical Care, and they've been in business for about 30 years now. They've been doing their Senior Life Solutions program for about 10 years now. They work exclusively in rural communities. At this point, they have 158 different communities that they work in. So they really understand the access, the resource restraints, the transportation issues, and the behavioral health needs of communities like ours. Next slide. And the senior experiences are going to be the same experiences that anybody encounters, but when you deal with seniors, you're dealing with loss of agency, you're dealing with some loneliness, you're dealing with more grief and loss, you're dealing with loss of independence. So when we have this ability to bring people together in a peer setting, the therapeutic experience is much improved. Next. So because we have practiced, because we're working with psychiatric medical care, we've been able to recruit in a psychiatrist to our medical staff. We've been able to recruit in a licensed marriage and family therapist to our staff. And what's really exciting to me is we've brought in an office and patient coordinator, which is an employee who left us years ago. And we're starting to see a trend at the hospital where old former employees who are skilled and intelligent and hardworking are returning. So this is not just a new start of a new program at the hospital, it's the re-engagement of some really important employees that we've had previously. Next slide. So the nice thing about this program is it's all referral types. It can be self-referral, it can be your physician or your provider, it can be a loved one, it can be a family member, or it can be anonymous. If you have a friend or a loved one that you don't want to get the heat for referring them to a behavioral health program, send it in anonymously. We just need a name and a phone number, and the team will go from there. After the initial assessment, it is an IOP program. That's an intensive outpatient program, but it really is tailored to each patient's specific needs. So you can start with just 1 day a week or titrate up to 5 days a week. Similarly, you can start with 5 days a week and titrate down. It really depends upon the goals that each individual patient sets and whether or not they're getting what they want out of the program. Next. And then structure, it's Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays are group therapy. So it's capped at 10 patients. We hope to be able to start 2 cohorts within the next year so that we'll have 20 patients as our census. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays are group therapy or individual therapy, family therapy. And when we say family therapy, what we really mean is you can have the senior in therapy, you can have the senior and loved one together in therapy. You can have a adult child and a senior, you can have a caretaker and a senior, grandchildren and grandparents as well. And in the context of family therapy, the senior does not have to be included in this session. So the caretaker, the spouse, the loved one, the grandchild, the adult child can have individual therapy in this program in addition to, together therapy. Next. And this is what's really kind of exciting to me is we have a lot of people in the community who are grandparents raising grandchildren. That comes with a lot of stress and anxiety, communication issues, trust issues, cultural issues, technical issues, school issues, and how do we navigate that kind of new family unit? So this gives a lot of added support to seniors in our community raising kids at this time. Next. And I'll let Jessica speak a little bit more on the efficacy of the program, but like I said, they've been operating for about 10 years now, so they have a lot of good data to support that people do improve whenever they engage in the program.
So like Lauren said, we do have 158 programs throughout the United States that are successful, which is great. We have I want to say we have probably 10 right now that are the 2-track where they have the 20 patients instead of just the 10 patients. We'd like to keep the individuals or the group therapy at a minimum of 10, just so it's conducive for everybody. We want them to be able to relate to everybody. We focus on the senior population because the transitions that 30-year-olds are going and 70-year-olds are going through are completely different. So it's not a conducive therapy. As she said, it's an intensive outpatient therapy. With any therapy, the more intensive it is, the faster you're going to get better. So it's kind of the same way with mental health as it would be physical therapy or occupational therapy. We work very closely with the primary care providers. So we let them know that their patient has been admitted to our program. We do outcome testing, which tests like anxiety and depression levels, suicidal ideations, homicidal ideations. We test for all of that monthly. And we communicate all of that with the primary care provider as well. We do have a psychiatrist on staff that does telehealth once a month and meets with the patient. And they can prescribe medications if needed. But again, we work with the primary care provider because we start discharge upon admission because we want everybody to get better and graduate from our program. So that primary care provider is going to follow them after they leave our program. So we want the primary care provider to be comfortable with anything that we do. And then after, we call it aftercare. So people can be in our program for 6 months, 3 years, 2 years. It's very individualized. So it's whatever that person needs to work on is what we're going to help them with. After they graduate from the program, we do aftercare. So every quarter we do an aftercare party is what we call them, where everybody that has graduated from our program is invited. We have food, kind of, just let everybody know. We might have a guest speaker, just let them see how everybody else is doing. And then we follow them personally. So we will call them a week after we discharge, a month after we discharge, 3 months after we discharge, and 6 months until they tell us not to call them anymore. The good thing is even if somebody graduates from the program and say, somebody graduated and we call them within that month and they're like, yeah, I was doing really good, but my spouse has passed away, or now I'm going to have to move into a assisted living or something like that. So I'm just not struggling, or I'm struggling with that. Then we can readmit them right away. There's no, lag or anything like that. So, and as she said, with the intensive outpatient, it is 3 group sessions, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then individual in between that. But it's again tailored to that person. So if somebody can't manage to do the 3 groups because they're busy, then we'll tailor it to whatever they can do. So we just want to make sure that they're successful and get the help that they need. Any questions?
Very good. No, thank you very much.
I have one.
Okay.
Okay, so as a son who took care of both his mother and his father, I certainly was not 65 at the time, but if I needed help, would I be able to call on you to help guide what I should expect in dealing with my parents who didn't live in town?
So we could help you, and what we also can do is provide resources that can help you. So if we weren't able to help you with what you need to do next, we're gonna give you a resource. We're gonna help you set up that resource, and whether that looks like you're looking for assisted living placement, or you're looking for, doctors or anything like that. Yes, we're gonna help you.
Okay.
And the reason we do, like I said, 65 and older, we just say typically is because we want it to be conducive for everybody that's in that group. So, you will see occasionally, maybe like, I would say 55, 50, 55, maybe having some struggles with a lot of diagnosis, disabilities or something. And a lot of times they're going through the same life transitions that those 65 and older are going through. So,
Thank you.
any other questions?
Yeah, how is this funded and what is the cost, if anything, to the patients? Well,
So everybody's insurance is different. What we know is that typically traditional Medicare A and B with a supplementary will cover at 100%. But we run everybody's insurance prior to them starting our program because we never want anybody to get a bill that they don't know about. So we verify their insurance, make sure how much they're going to pay, and we are very upfront with all of that. So everybody is different as to how much it's going to cost, but we want to lay it completely out and be transparent and let them know that this is going to cost X amount of dollars. And then it's their decision. If that's something that they can't afford, then we are personally going to get them set up with somebody that they can afford. The hospital has got some access, some resources that maybe can do better, with the insurance and everything than what our program is able to do. The behavioral health, you guys have a wealth of resources in your community. You're so lucky for mental health. But we will personally, and when I say we will give them the resources, it's not here, call this phone number and see what they can do for you. I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to call over to the social worker and say, this is what I have. What can we do for them? And how soon can I get them in for an appointment? And then I'm going to walk them over to that social worker.
So we know we don't get authorizations for your Medicare Advantage plans. That's going to be the real pain point. But straight Medicare, is easy to work with and pays a
very good. And there's no federal or state money behind any of this or otherwise. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Council?
Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I was telling Lauren briefly when we were chatting that, I'm so happy to see, Glenn Medical Center here expanding services and that it's still here and when you go inside the hospital, actually see the beds occupied in the hospital, which is great because for years it wasn't that way. But, and also, for the life of me, I can't understand why, knock on wood, I'm a pretty healthy guy, but twice a year I have to go to the lab and get my 2 annual physicals a year that I have to take. And, the laboratory services are fantastic right here in Willows. There's no reason to go to Chico or Orland or anywhere else for lab work. I mean, it's an awesome lab. So, but, it's great, just really good to hear that their services are expanding, but I don't know if you'd ever heard this, but, the only thing we're lacking from a mental health standpoint, in my opinion here, is a secure facility that we used to have right at your hospital, the secure inpatient facility. And when I started my law enforcement career in the late 70s, that facility was up, running, and busy. And it was in service until sometime in the 80s. I don't remember what year now, but we used it. It's mid 80s, yeah, and we used it constantly in the law enforcement, constantly, and it was well used. And for whatever reason, it was shuttered. And now, as you know, individuals that need secure facility type access, it's all transport based now. So which also comes at a huge cost. But anyway, thank you for everything you're doing down there, and thank you for presenting tonight. So very good. Item 7, public comment and consent calendar forum. All matters on the consent calendar are considered routine and are approved by one motion and vote unless council members or the city manager first request that a matter be removed for separate discussion and action. Individuals wishing to address the city council concerning consent calendar items or regarding matters that are not already on the agenda are invited to make roll comments of up to 3 minutes at this time. And please address your comments to the mayor and council members and not to staff and or the audience. And as a reminder, by state law, the council is not permitted to undertake any action or discussion on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. This evening, our consent calendar consists of item 7A, register approval. Consider approval of the general checking, payroll, and direct deposit check registers. And item 7B, there are only 2 items tonight in consent. Our minutes approval, consider approval of the August 27th, 2024 council meeting minutes. Before we move on to the consent calendar, are there any public comments on any matters pertaining to any matters that are not on the agenda this evening? If so, please approach the podium. Any matters not on the agenda? Any public comments? No? Okay, very good. Council members, consent calendar.
Move to approve.
Second.
Councilmember Thomas has moved to approve the consent calendar as presented. Councilmember Bodden has the second. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Carries 4-0. Thank you. Item 8, discussion and action calendar. I'll call for public comment as we move through each item. I won't bore you with reading what I just read to you again. So moving on to, we're going to move under changes to the agenda. We'll hear item 8C first. Item 8C, the 2024 Community Development Block Grant Project Application. Discuss and direct staff to prepare an over-the-counter first come, first served CDBG application for either a sidewalk repair or fire truck acquisition project. City Manager Marty Brown.
Thank you, Mayor and Vice Mayor and council members. As you may recall, a couple of weeks ago, we came before the council to discuss options for a CDBG application. There's a couple of different versions of that application coming out. One is an over-the-counter application, one application per jurisdiction up to $3.3 million, which is due October 30th on a first come, first served basis. Shortly after our meeting on Tuesday, a few days later on August 30th, the Notice of Funding Availability, what we affectionately call NOFA, the acronym, we came out and it further defined exactly what this particular round and this year of CDBG grant guidelines were going to be. And it required staff to do further drilling down and defining the options available to the city of Willows in which we would actually be ready to apply for. So while there was a strong interest on the part of the council to, in our last discussion, to look at streets, sidewalks, and some signage, because we do not have our engineering documents ready for street improvements, we are not eligible at this time to move forward with the streets project. And so as we looked at all the possibilities of what we could do in the timeline that we have by October 30th, we really came away, and I think the staff report speaks to it, and Joe can do further presentation, but basically it came down to one of 2 projects, either sidewalk repair and a robust application for a project like that throughout the city, or potentially 1 or 2 fire trucks. Those were the 2 project possibilities that we are eligible and ready for submitting an application at this time under this current pretty tight deadline. Did you want to add anything to that, Joe?
I think that covers it pretty well. Again, this is for the over-the-counter grant. This is our one application for the 3.3 million. So we'd be eligible for fire-related apparatus, multiple units, or a lot of linear feet of sidewalk construction. And sidewalk is just a lot easier for engineering, developing plans and specs. You're basically using a standard specification and picking out location. That's the major difference on it and the roads engineering, and why we can be ready in time for one and not the other.
And I probably should point out to the council, I did give you a handout at the request of Councilmember Bodden, the last decade of claims against the city related to sidewalk repair. Basically individuals who've injured themselves on city sidewalks. Most of the bulk of it totals about $746,000 in liability to the city over the last decade. The bulk of it has happened since 2020. The bulk of the incidents.
Okay, Marty, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Marty. Thank you, Joe. Council members, Councilmember Thomas, like to begin?
Not yet.
Okay, very good.
I'll defer to one of the other council members first.
How about Councilmember Wadden?
Well, I had a really great closing, but if you insist, yes. No, well, I feel very strongly about this particular subject. The research, thank you for doing it. We have 2 options. all the years I've lived in Willows since the early 90s, 1990s, sidewalks have been an issue. The efforts to fix, the lack of complete fixing of things, the continuous presence of the broken and chipped and cracked and otherwise damaged sidewalks, the $750,000 of cost in 10-year time period, the reality that we can only expect that to go up as litigation and other issues associated with sidewalk incidents, accidents, and sometimes inspired events. There's just no question in my mind. The sidewalks will have no continuous expense to us. Equipment does. There's $4,000 worth of expenses associated with fire equipment on just this month's check register. There's nothing about the fire option, except this is the right one to do. And there's a system in my world wherein we have a liability for providing safe sidewalks. There's a word called willful and wanton neglect that occurs in law when you know something is wrong. You are aware of it, you've identified it, and you do nothing. Willful and wanton neglect is a guaranteed loser for the person or persons who don't take action to remedy the problem. We have an opportunity here, thanks to the grant, to address these sidewalks that I am so sick of hearing about and seeing and tripping over, that I think we have no other idea or no other option, thank you, for this decision, but to move forward as aggressively and as effectively as we can to rid the city of Willows of a long overdue problem having to do with, of all things, sidewalks. I heartily hope that this council will direct staff to address this grant fully for the purpose of repairing, improving our sidewalks, the respect of our citizens of our city, and those that visit us and will no longer see what would appear to a new arrival as neglect or a lack of concern or care. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. Vice Mayor Hudson.
I guess I'll go next then. Yeah, so I was called by Marty and this has been, I guess a back and forth for me. I mentioned the idea of if we could get 2 new fire trucks instead of just 1. I also asked the question if we could split it between sidewalks and possibly a new fire engine. Been trying to find multiple ways here to, I guess, kind of find the best use for this amount of money. Chief, is that something that would be possible? Would be to possibly apply for 2 fire engines and upstaff our outdated equipment there?
Yeah, I was waiting for the right opportunity to talk, because I feel like I would be derelict if I didn't give you guys my opinion on the fire trucks versus sidewalks. I see both issues as the fire chief affecting me personally and my department personally. I see both issues as being public safety issues. It is my understanding that the cost that associated with the sidewalks, that burden is going to be changed in the near future with the new code. The other piece that I think that we need to consider with the fire engines, it would not be the addition of fire engines, it would be replacements of fire engines that are either already due to be replaced and should have been replaced already, or are going to be needing replaced in the near future. The 2 apparatus that I would recommend applying for would be engine 2, which is that 1994 that's it's been plagued with mechanical issues the last couple of years, and I said it on the news the other day, we're literally keeping it together with silly string and duct tape. The other piece of apparatus that we would be looking at replacing and getting the order set for would be the ladder truck. The ladder truck is coming up on 25 years old, which is about the time frame that you need to be replacing them. Through the fire apparatus manufacturers, there's about a 3-year lead time from the day that you order them to the day that they show up. The other potential problem that we're going to run into is the 2027 emission laws. It's already affecting the fire service with the type 3 fire engines. When I say type 3, imagine the CAL FIRE trucks that you see driving down the road. every cabin chassis for 2025 and 2026 have already been purchased. You can't buy a cabin chassis for an international or Freightliner anymore. They've already been purchased. And who's purchased them? The state and the federal government, and the local government guys have gotten the few that they've been able to get. For the most part, the state and the feds have purchased them all, knowing that there's a 2027 federal emission law that comes in that we haven't designed a motor yet to meet. So we can't even buy a Type 3 fire engine right now if we wanted to. If you talk to the manufacturers, they won't give you a price on what that fire engine is going to be in 2027 because they don't know what the motor is going to look like. For these Type 1s and the ladder trucks, so engine 2 and the ladder truck, they're custom built cabin chassis, whether if we go with Pierce, High-Tech, Rosenbauer, they build the cabin chassis themselves and they can get motors for them still. As of, I believe 3 days or last Friday I talked, they can still get motors. There's still room in the production to get a 2025 or 2026 motor, but they're starting to run out. So what does that mean for us? There's a very good likelihood that if we wait too much longer, we're not going to be able to get a motor, which puts us into 2027. And we don't know what that price difference is going to look like. For illustrative purposes, I talked to the Pierce representative and did some research talking with the Orland Fire Chief. They purchased their ladder truck. It's a 110-foot Pierce Ascendant Quint from Pierce in 2016. That ladder truck cost just under $900,000. I had the Pierce rep quote the exact same ladder truck, a carbon copy of that one, and what it would cost to order it today, and it's $2 million. In 8 years, it's gone up over double. Type 1 fire engines are looking around the same, and this is just one manufacturer. This is Pierce, but the growth and cost is across the board. They ordered a new Type 1 fire engine in 2020, I believe right in 2020, and it was right at $700,000. That same engine, carbon copy today, you're looking at 1.1. So the longer that we push these out, the longer that the more expensive they're going to get. And both Pierce and High-Tech won't give you a price for what a 2027 model is going to look at because they don't know what that motor looks like. So I think that both are very, very important public safety issues. But from the guy that's going to have to deal with a lot of the public safety issues associated with the slips, trips, and falls from the sidewalk, or going to the fires, I see it as, the sidewalks have been an issue and they're going to continue to be an issue. And we can find and we can fix those, moving forward. I don't know when we're going to get handed the potential for another $3 million pot to get these two unfunded capital asset replacements done. So that would be my recommendation, but you guys are the council and you guys can do whatever you'd like to
They will.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. Yeah, go ahead.
On that front, we had also discussed, I think I kind of emailed you a little about this, Joe, on funds being used as a reimbursement basis for sidewalks, considering that it's a lot easier for the individual homeowner to replace their sidewalks. It's about half the cost compared to the city going through and replacing that exact same sidewalk because of the cost of things. Is that something that we can use these funds to offer a program like that to our citizens? Or is that going to be has to be a city used?
It would have to be a city used fund on that.
And how many linear feet are we looking at covering with that? Could we potentially? You have that?
If my math is right, which is coin flip, I got about 94,000 square feet at $35 a square foot. If we got the $3.3 million grant, working out to 19,000 linear feet
19,000 linear feet
on a
So-
5-foot sidewalk, on a
Okay.
60-inch sidewalk.
And just so you know, Vice Mayor, we are working on that program that we're planning to bring back on the 24th using other funds though, not
Okay.
using general fund money or CDBG grant money. So that's going to come back to the council in a few.
So we actually have a plan in place to help hopefully work on our sidewalks and I mean,
We are
besides the current
working
plan
on
that
it,
we do.
yes.
Yes,
I
okay.
mean, it won't be as robust as a $3.3 million
I understand
project
that.
application by any stretch, but something more than what we have today, yes.
Cost share program
Okay.
for residents. Yep.
It's about 19,000 linear feet, so at 5 feet wide, so that's just under 4 miles. My math right there? So 5,000 feet in a mile? So that goes across town about 3 times, 4 times. Okay. Do you guys have any problem spots like that this grant would be taken care of, that you're seeing an immediate need on the sidewalks?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got everywhere. We've got installation of new sidewalks. We don't have like we do with our pavement management index where we've got them rated and ranked. But what we do
Mhm.
have is the ADA study that looked at I believe all the sidewalks throughout the city. The county also had a part in that, looking at their buildings. But we've got a nice document that outlines the sections and has photos and things of that nature. I do want to make a note with this. We would be looking specifically at sidewalks just because of the engineering. It would not include curb ramps or curb and gutter on that because the engineering is very specific on those and it takes a lot more time. So we would be looking at sidewalks specifically. So we don't really have a rating or ranking, but I can pretty much guarantee for what it takes to get ADA compliance out of sidewalk, it would be easy to find the sidewalks. To do that much. Basically, what we would go out and do is just do a survey based off the old survey and go look and pick and choose long stretches that need the most rehab.
Yeah, this is one of those tough ones that you guys are throwing out to us because they're both, like I said, public safety related. And that's why I was really hoping that we can essentially kill 2 birds with 1 stone with this. My head's leaning towards actually the fire engines and replacing old outdated equipment that are continuously costing us money to keep up. My concern with that too is that usually means newer technology with those engines and which come to higher replacement or repair costs when you go to get those fixed. But at the same time, we also need the sidewalks for people to be able to travel safely, for kids to walk to school and things like that as well. So I'm still kind of on the fence of this one. I honestly don't know where my mind's leading me right now. So I'm going to give that over to Mr. Thomas or the mayor and let them speak while I continue to ponder over here.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Mr. Thomas.
Well, I too am kind of on the fence with this because I understand the concept of you buy the trucks now because they're only going to keep going up in value or cost. I think it's ridiculous that a ladder truck is $2.2 million. But that apparently is what they are. Do we have any idea what it costs to maintain that in that 1994 engine two?
Well, without an exact, I'd say it probably costs engine 2, costs us anywhere. Just in parts so far, we've been lucky because we've been able to do a lot of the work ourselves. Like for example, the ladder truck's alternator went out maybe a month ago and the volunteers helped us replace it with the labor. Engine 2 has had it's had pump failures. I would say we're probably $2 or $3 grand a year. And keep in mind that that's, traditionally in the past has been the council has given $10,000 for vehicle maintenance and we've always gone over it. The ladder truck recently had, I would say, $20,000+ of work done to it because of hydraulic failures in the aerial device, cracks that were found in the aerial device that had to go down for specialty welding. Engine 2 has been, engine 2 also doesn't get driven very often because we don't like to drive it. Not because it's beneath, it's beneath us, but it seems like every time we move it, something breaks on it. So engine 2's not been too bad as far as costs go. The ladder truck has been the one that's been expensive the last year and a half, 2 years.
So what do we do with the ladder truck and the engine two that we replaced? What happens to that carcass? Is there money to be had
we would surplus them through BidCal or a similar type, uh, avenue. I think the ladder truck, we could probably get somewhere. Don't hold this to me, and I'm not a vehicle appraiser, but I've been seeing trucks similar to truck 4 going from anywhere from $80,000 to $200,000. Engine 2, if we got 15 or 20 out of it, I would be surprised.
And
And is it foolish to think that we could take $500,000 and invest it in a ladder truck and make it well?
Yeah, the I don't see, I mean, I don't exactly know. I've never heard of like a full blown refurbishment. The part of the problem with truck 4 is when it was purchased as a 77-foot ladder truck. The reason why they went with that was it was a demo rig. It was a show rig. So we were getting a good deal on it. It was also a single axle truck, meaning that it was a shorter wheelbase. And so it would fit in the station. But it doesn't actually reach the roofs of our taller buildings. Like the Holiday Inn, things like that. We can barely reach the 3rd floor if we are comfortable with setting up within the collapse zone. And getting to the roof, we're pretty much parked next to the building.
actually, I was going to bring this up because we actually already had a hotel investor come here who wanted to build a 4-story hotel, and we basically had to say, we can't, I mean, we're not going to be able to ensure your safety or your, your visitor's safety because we don't have a ladder truck that goes that high. So at some point, I hate to say it, but it does also impact economic development. I mean, if the city wants to grow, and we've talked about this continuously since I've been here about growth and development, honestly, it's oddly enough, it's things like this that can actually debilitate the city's ability to become debilitating in terms of growth, especially if you want to go up at all.
Thank you.
Anything further, Rick?
No, I don't think so. The sidewalks desperately need to be fixed. Those sort of things could be worked on in segments, which you can't work on a fire truck in segments. So I'm probably leaning more for a fire truck.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Vaughn, you had something further?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, this isn't we can split the money in half and do both. This is one of those tough decisions. You have to do one or the other. I hope that we put the people in front of the fire department in this example. We have always had a plan to fix the sidewalks. Always. When I got here in 1992, we had a plan to fix the sidewalks. We look around. So the idea that we will go forward with a plan to fix the sidewalks is not credible to me. I know we want to, and I know we'll try, but we have an opportunity to fix the sidewalks. Not think about it, talk about it, and deal with lawsuits at ever increasing volumes of money and cost to the community. The cost of fire equipment has always been dramatic. It is always way off the chart to what one might think they cost, and there are always ways to deal with it. This referencing a law in 2027 is unnecessary because just like the diesel truck exhaust emission program, if you were familiar with that, it went on and around and about, up and down. So here's the deal. I'm not worried about 2027 because every city, every county, every jurisdiction has a fire truck. They will find a way to deal with whatever throws at us for 2027. More people are affected by sidewalks than anything else. The rules will change. They always change. Early adapters, for example, for a law in 2027, if you adapt it now, you might wake up in 2027 and find out what you did was inappropriate, wrong, and now you got to do it over. I've seen that happen. So I encourage us to rely on Nathan Monk's outstanding ability to get grant money. He's exceptional at it. Between now and the time that after we fix our sidewalks or while we're fixing our sidewalks, we will find the money. We will find the method, the procedure, the way to get a fire trucks and whatever the equipment we need. I never understood why we had a ladder truck when we got it, but we have one. And as far as economic development, I submit that the appearance of the community has just as much impact on a potential 4 or 5-story building that may or may not ever come along. So once again, the sentiment of fire, the sentiment of fire service, the sentiment of fire people is always dominant. And I think this is a time for us to say the people first. I'm not on the fence. I'm voting for sidewalks. And I hope that we all vote for sidewalks. It's nothing against the fire department because they're going to get that truck. They're going to get the problem solved. They're going to find the money. I am not worried about it. They are very good at finding money and getting equipment and supplies and all that they need every time they need it.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. I'd like to get both, but that's not possible, right? So very simple in my mind. Yeah, absolutely. We've got sidewalks all over the city that are in terrible shape. And David, you're absolutely correct on the number of claims. Thank you for bringing this forward. And the number of injury claims we've had in reference to sidewalks is extremely damaging and more to follow, unfortunately. We've kicked around the sidewalk issue for a number of years. It's expensive. We're still working on that. Obviously, I mean, what isn't expensive anymore. But from a public safety standpoint, and being in the public safety business for more decades than I willing to admit, I am firmly behind pursuing a fire apparatus with this grant funding. They're both public safety issues. However, when I weigh them on a set of legal scales, for example, the fire department has the weight, the protection of life and property. And the ladder truck, you know, and appreciate your comments, David, but a ladder truck is badly needed. And truck 4 here is also an engine, correct? It also pumps water here. It's just not a traditional hook and ladder truck that you see in large municipal areas. And it responds on the major incidents, every structure fire, the ladder truck responds. It responds countywide as well as Orleans now. That ladder truck has saved untold amounts in property damage, and God knows how many lives it saved on a number of incidents, a large number of incidents that it's been on just within the city of Willows since it came into service. What year is that? Is it like a truck 4, Chief?
I believe it's a 2024 or no, 2004.
We wish.
Yeah.
What?
I believe it's a 2004. And I believe we got it in 2005.
Yeah, 2004. So 20 years in service, and it, you know, and it's been to West Sacramento several times over the last couple of years for those types of repairs. I mean, it's a well-used piece of apparatus. Structure fires and vehicle accidents, it's on them all the time, and it's been a godsend and a lifesaver. But you know that Engine 2, 1994 model has served the city and the community extremely well. She's old and she's tired. So, and Chief, it's unacceptable in my mind, and I realize that Engine 2 is worn out. It's worn out. You've told us that a number of times. We are how many years now behind in our replacement schedule for Engine 2? 4 years or more?
So in a ideal world, it would have been put into reserve 15 years ago.
Oh, boy.
But typically for us, we keep our stuff, like an ideal world, it would be a frontline engine for 15 years and then move to reserve for 15 and then go away at 30. We don't have that luxury, and I understand that. So typically they run about 30 years. And then with the delay of the 36 months for a build, it should have been ordered 3 years ago.
Yeah, so we're at 30. We're at 30 years now, moving into 31st year with basically the number 2 engine, basically. I mean, and Engine 3 is it a 2019 model, Chief?
Yeah, Engine 3 is a 2019 state spec that we also got a demo model on to save some money. And it's a 2019 that went in service in December of 2020.
We got a great deal on Engine 3, and that was the last one. Chief Peabody was able to secure that. That was the last engine in the state. And we got a good deal on it because of that. And now it's hard pressed with, you know, Engine 3 is the go-to rig Because engine two is not working well. So, and that's, you put that additional stress on that engine, that's an issue as well, chief, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so. In other words, that's going to wear out sooner. So the goal is 30 years, but we shall see.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to know that, engine three does break sometimes and it does, have need routine maintenance and things like that, you think it's going to be a oil change and a service that's going to take half a day and then they find something and then it turns into ordering a part and it's now out of service for, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 days plus. And, so that entire time we're fingers crossed that engine two works. We used it the other day for a training, trying to, that way we could keep all the hoses on engine three and stay available if there was a call. And the training was canceled and we had to figure out why we're not able to put it in pump because it wouldn't go into pump gear. So.
And chief, thank you, chief. And on your major instance, is always, it's a frightening, eerie sight to see Willows Fire Station empty. And it's been empty way too many times. I mean, all apparatus out on incidents. And when you need engine two, it might be able to pump water, maybe. That's not acceptable. That's not good. So the city right now is running with, reliable engine three and truck four. So our third city-owned type 1 fire engine is out back and doesn't run very well. That's not a good plan. It's not it's not a good emergency plan. That's no reflection on you, chief. You're doing a marvelous job as our fire chief. It's on us to find the money for you to replace that fire apparatus that's worn out. But, David, I appreciate, I totally understand what you're saying. Completely understand. I wish we had both options, but unfortunately we don't. And I will weigh on the side of public safety, protection of life and property, over sidewalks, just, the way this lays out. Now, chief, with the $3.3 million over-the-counter process, we can pursue both a ladder and an engine, or is it a maybe?
We could get both.
Okay, that would be awesome. And then, we're behind the 8 ball on our replacement schedule. In years past, a number of years ago, we were able to augment about $52,000 or $53,000 of our annual budget toward fire apparatus replacement each year. And the last time that money was used was for the older command vehicle, the 2018, I believe, portion of that money, not the full amount. I think it was $43,000 if I remember. But as our budget issues have ever increased year after year after year, we no longer have that augmentation to fund for fire apparatus. It's a lot easier when you have a bank account, when you have a line item with money that you can write for replacement engine every few years. And right now we, unfortunately, just due to financial situation, we're not in that position, unfortunately. Hopefully that'll be rectified soon. But chief, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, to potentially think about, for the council to chew over is, this is a grant opportunity that my understanding has no match requirement. And the best chance I would have at a grant to even get close to being able to pay for one of these, and it would be one, not both, would be through the AFG, and that's a minimum of a 10% match. So I wouldn't be able to find a grant that doesn't have a match requirement. I also would be leading you astray if I told you that I thought that was like a good probability. I've applied for those engines for the city and the rural through that same grant process. I've written them. I've had consultants help me write them, and I've never had one awarded yet. It's a super, super, super competitive process.
Very recently, as a matter of fact, we submitted letters in support, and it was a no-go for us, unfortunately. And one last question, Chief, and thank you for being here tonight to answer these questions. Our ISO rating. if we don't do something about replacing fire apparatus, won't that put us in jeopardy of an increased insurance rating?
Yeah, so the way the ISO rating works is basically the lowest number, and this is a general recap. Lowest number, a 1 is the best, 10 is the worst. We're fortunate enough to be rated a 2 in the city of Willows.
Good.
The ladder truck is a pretty decent size piece of that score. They look at water supply, they look at training records, they look at fire prevention efforts. They look at response times, staffing, and equipment. The ladder truck is a pretty significant piece of our score. We used to only get credit for half of a ladder truck because you need 2 to get scored for 1 because one's not always going to be around. We got around that with the auto aid agreements with Orland because now we have 2 ladder trucks. It also benefited Orland. But without the ladder truck, we wouldn't be a 2 anymore.
And the 2 ISO rating of 2 is phenomenal for a city this size.
Yeah.
Especially with a fire department of only 4 career staff. Yeah, and so excellent work there. That's really all I had. I mean,
I have one last.
oh, yes, David, go ahead.
I
Go ahead.
apologize, but so as I listen to the desperate status of our current fire equipment and our fire service capability and all of these things that are almost alarming as to their desperation. Nathan, what was the plan to deal with all of these issues specifically if this grant had not come along?
We didn't have one.
There you go.
The plan to fix those things, when I got here, we had radios that were 25 years old. We had BAs that were 20 years old. We had hose that was illegal for us to be using. And we got Hail Mary lucky get out of jail free cards. And I think that with the addition of, if we were to be able to replace engine 2 and the truck, those are the last 2 big ticket items that I don't know how we're going to pay for them, other than general fund.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, David.
Well, I mean, clearly the grant is an opportunity and clearly the fire world has multitudes of avenues for finding funding and resources to make sure that we can fight fires. We've had how many structural fires within the city limits of Willows in the last couple of years? Not too many. But again, I think the resource availability to deal with fire is far greater than it will ever be again for us to finally address this horrific safety, personal injury, liability, financial liability of sidewalks. And
Thank-
I know you guys all work.
Thank you, David. Are there any public comments in reference to this matter?
Can I
So
ask a
please,
quick question real quick?
sure. Go ahead.
Joe, quick question for you.
Sure.
You said no curb and gutter is included in that sidewalk. What does that mean for how those sidewalks would get done and be done?
So it would be to the back of the existing curb.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're not looking where we're doing that. I can't remember what you call it exactly, but there's the dead space where people like to plant like a random tree that actually is the reason.
It
why we
would
have
be
such
dependent
traffic.
if it's existing or not.
Okay.
So what we would be doing, just for quick engineering purposes, is just like for like replacement of what is currently there. So we basically have a standard specification like we already have when somebody goes and puts in a new sidewalk,
Mhm.
and then we just pick locations out for that. So if it was a 4-foot sidewalk, we'd probably spec back a 4-foot as long as it met ADA requirement, which that does. So we'd be looking for a straightforward engineering process, and that's why the curb and gutter and any of the streetscape stuff would be out, and we'd just be doing the concrete from curb ramp to curb ramp.
Okay. Now that being said, if we are applying for additional grants for, let's say, our roads, are those sidewalks being replaced at the same time that we're doing the roads? Because that's actually part of that program.
Great
Or-
point. I'm going to lead this into a little bit of the planning stuff, which is a different conversation than tonight, but we have the option, what we're looking at direction, you guys wanted to do roads, is going for a planning grant up to 300,000 to get all our engineered plan specs, bid documents done for road projects.
Mhm.
So within that, there's a sidewalk specific code that you can use in CDBG. But if you're redoing streets, yeah, you can include all of those things, street, curb gutter, parkway if there is one, sidewalk in that one application as well. So yeah, we could look at design documents. Obviously, sidewalk engineering isn't much. We'd mainly spend that on the streets. But if we got funded for a street project down the way
Mhm.
in CDBG, the road through the sidewalk could be included in a project. If
Okay.
that makes sense. Or
And-
sidewalks alone, or
And funding for, and options for funding and finding funding for projects like that, is that easier than the average bear or? Parent, I got two options here, and I got one that says, the options for us to try and get the funding is very hard for us to find replacements. And so now I'm trying to figure out how the funding is for the other side.
so CDBG is to me, no match. We qualify as a low mod area. This
Mhm.
grant right here, if it comes back year after year, which it's supposed to, but we've got, that's the budget of California in the hands too. This is federal money that's kicked down to the state. So as long as HUD keeps funding it, we have that. So I've done public improvement projects with this funding before, for curb, gutter, and storm drain improvements. It's the best way to go. There's Caltrans funding available, ATP funding. It gets really competitive and is a much harder grant to achieve. But this, since we qualify as a low mod area, I'd say for both options is one of the better ways to go, and that we apply for.
It's
things
so
that we
easy,
do.
Evan, that in 30 years, we haven't been able to do it.
Well,
I
you know,
was
I
gonna say,
think it's important to note that CDBG has, as a grant application process, has been around for, well, my whole career in the public sector. So that's well over 20 years and probably 30 or 40 years. Now, is it annual? Is it every year? No, not always.
They miss.
Sometimes they skip a year, but it's pretty regular and pretty, often, I would say, compared to some other fly-by-night grant opportunities that come our way. So there is a good chance there'll be another CDBG, if not next year, at least by 2026. And another opportunity similar to this, because this is their new model, is this sort of hybrid over-the-counter one, first come, first serve. You get one application. This isn't the first time they've done this. And then this other longer one that's called a competitive grant, where they, are ranking you kind of thing. So I do think it'll come back around again. This is definitely, I don't think the last year. It might be 2 years because of the Fed, the funding with the federal government, but we'll see.
We're going to be in a highly, well, it's not competitive, it's over the counter, but there's going to be a lot of jurisdictions applying because they've been on a bit of hiatus on new applications
Mhm.
and funding older applications. So when you look at $36 million, and that's, I think 20 of it's going to over the counter application and $3.3 million at a max application, you're not talking about funding a whole lot of jurisdictions, and that's community service districts, cities, counties, everywhere. So it's going to be, and everybody, they have a 50% rule to where you can't apply until 50% of your total program funds are spent down. A lot of people are going to be eligible because they don't have open grants because they've been on a little bit of a break from it. So
And the other thing I would say, speaking to what Councilmember Bodden said about, why haven't we gotten these before? It's been 30, 40 years, 20 years, whatever, and we haven't gotten these kind of grants before. I mean, some of it is also just the culture of the organization. If the culture of an organization, because I've worked in lots, somewhere grants isn't really part of the culture, and we just don't go after many, or we don't have the bandwidth of the staff to do it. Some cultures, it's more of, we know what we're good at, and we go after very specific ones like CDBG that we know we got a good shot at. Some organizational cultures, and I mean city governments, they hire an in-house grant writer. They are all over grants. They make it practically their mission in life. I mean, a municipality runs the gamut of its culture, and some of that culture certainly is directed and comes down from the council. Some of it is clearly the person sitting in my seat also. And so, I think what you're seeing is there's a shift. We're trying to be strategic about what we go after, where we know we have a good chance and we're competitive, because we are only 18 people, right? So we can't go after everything. And we're not hiring a grant writer. So we're trying to be thoughtful and, about how we approach it and what we do. And then, we've also got some super go-getters over here on our team that are both very good at writing grants and have been good at securing grants. So I think the culture right now in this organization is to go after what we think we're competitive at, and it's a good use of staff time. And I think that this particular grant is one of those grants And I don't think it's the last time it will ever come around either to the city of Willows.
Thank
Well,
you.
and I want to say, Evan, if I may, if we attach this decision to the possibility or a prognosis of getting grants for whichever one we don't pick, then I think it applies on both sides. If you're asking, can we get grants to do the sidewalks later? The question should be asked, can we get grants to do the fire truck needs and wants later? You know,
Right,
difference
no,
affected
I
each-
wasn't, but Chief already answered that question for us, so that's why I didn't ask that question. And I already know that he did apply for a different type one engine that did not pass through. So I was gonna let it go, let Mary Hanson open it to public comment, so.
Yeah, thank you. We'll have further council debate. Thank you, Evan. Open it up to public comments from our audience members in reference to this matter. Please approach the podium. It's not required, but it is appreciated if you state your name for the record. Thank you. Evening, Lori.
Who are you?
Lori Pride. I'm here to advocate for sidewalks. I think even since I was on the city council, which was in the late 1997, 98, 99, somewhere in that realm, we were talking about fixing sidewalks, and I don't know that the city's had a program since then. I've heard this council talk about making the sidewalks the responsibility of the property owner. And if you're going to give them all to the property owners in the state they are, that's, I would say, a shame on you. That's just passing the liability on. I personally have sidewalks that were destroyed by the city trees, which I was successful in having those removed. But now that the roots are deteriorating, now the sidewalks are continuing to crumble. They're actually getting worse. I've looked into the cost of repairing that sidewalk on my own. It's $6,000 at a minimum. You know, I have to get licensed, get insured, it's hard to find concrete contractors. So if I'm going to do it myself, now I have to get bonded. There's all this rigmarole I have to go through. So I think the community expects at some point that there will be some concession to them as homeowners. And I know that you know that I'm a fire girl. But I do believe with Councilmember Bodden in this, I think there will be other opportunities to get fire apparatus. I think if we hadn't kicked sidewalks down the curb, down the road for so many years, I would feel differently. But I think that this community, especially at this point in time where we are with a lot of folks not very happy with the city, folks not trusting the city, folks not feeling listened to. And I'm experiencing that now as I'm out talking about Measure I, just talking about city in general. There's a significant amount of distrust and not happiness. And so I think going back and giving people their sidewalks and the ability to fix them. And if you're ever going to, there was some reference I think that Chief Monk made about with the new code, the cost of sidewalks won't be as much. And if I misinterpreted that, but I know at some point this council had talked about making the sidewalks the responsibility of the landowner. Well, if that's a way of just moving that cost over and not being responsible for it anymore in the sad condition they are, and you walk across the street and look at mine. The city, when they took the trees out, put asphalt patches in the bigger bumps. So it's more of a bump than a jagged edge.
It's a speed bump.
You know, and there's a lot of traffic by there. And honestly, I don't want to be responsible. I want it fixed. And I've been waiting. I've been there 3 years now and I've been waiting.
$750,000.
I have been waiting for a cost share program, for some kind of a sidewalk program, and I just keep hearing, we're going to have one, we're going to have one, we're going to have one. And now we have an opportunity to have one. And I'm hearing a lot of sway towards, you know, fire again, and fire's important. But I think on a day-to-day basis, the sidewalks, in my opinion, weigh a little bit heavier. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Any other public comments this evening? Evening, Gary.
Gary Taylor, lifelong member of Willows, California. Started doing concrete construction 1976, replaced a lot of sidewalks, curbs and gutters in Willows. And so I'm always looking for all these years, I'm still building, still doing stuff, better ways to do things. And I saw something, and this could be way out, you guys could laugh at me if you want, but I saw something with our friend Huell Hauser years ago on California Gold. And the city of Madera decided to change their sidewalks because they had so many sycamore trees growing all over, it's just tearing everything up. And they decided to go with a rubber-based sidewalk. And it was made out of discarded tires. And it was quite a process. They ground those tires up, they reprocessed them. It's the stuff we've been using down at the park, you know, for the kids and the rubber stuff. And I'm just wondering if we've ever said, is there an alternative? Is there a better way to do this? I remember when we replaced the sidewalk right over here across the street. Those trees, man, were just tearing those things up. And so we were adding rock salt to make the roots turn, right? Because we had to put a sidewalk back right here before all this was replaced. So that was 50 years ago. And I'm just wondering if we've ever thought about doing something different. You know, have we ever said, is there an alternative? Is there something that's better? Is there something we can do that is more conducive to being replaced in the future or being repaired or even lifting up and cutting the root out and putting it back down? And so we just, something for you to think about.
No, very good, Gary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Definitely, for sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other public comment in reference to this matter? Please approach the podium. Any other public comment? Last call? No one else? Okay, thank you. Council members, back to discussion. Mr. Thomas, anything? You have anything further?
Just one question I didn't ask before. Of the 746,000, we were paying deductibles. And our deductible is like 50 grand, if I remember right. If we fix the sidewalks, will that affect our insurance premiums? Good.
Not that I'm aware of, no, because I've asked them if we're being affected by not having adopted the ordinance that we've talked about many times of where it becomes the responsibility of the resident, like a lot of other cities have. I have asked them, is that going to someday, you know, come home to roost? And they said, yes, but, you know, it's still a ways out before we would have to have a lot more
Well,
complaints.
I've subscribed to the same notion that we can't turn the responsibility of the sidewalk over to the landowner if this guy's sidewalk is in good shape and this one's in horrible shape. That's just not fair to our citizens. So,
If we really wanted to do that, we should fix them first.
well, I would agree with you. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Evan, anything further?
No, I believe Joe already answered the question that the funds can't be used to cost share the sidewalks with anybody else, that this would be a city project itself.
And we also
So,
answered
no.
the question that it can't build a police department for this year
Okay.
either.
David, anything further?
Well, thank you. Thanks for listening.
No, I appreciate your thoughts, Lori, as well, and also Gary. That I'm intrigued by the alternative methods as well. That could be a huge cost savings. And the rubberized products, I mean, we've utilized them in parks here, you know, with good luck, Joe, I believe, correct?
Yeah, they tire recycled crumb rubber for the playgrounds. Is that what you're referencing?
Mhm.
Yeah. And Waste Tire Products in Orland, I don't know how into the game they are anymore, but they make a lot of recycled used tire products. So we do have a local vendor. I think they were doing some of the playground fill, but do the horse mats and different things like that. So sometimes it's more expensive depending on how it's made. Sometimes it's cheaper. They have rubberized asphalt micro rubberized asphalt that we used on a recent project. So depending on how it's blended and how it needs to be blended, and that's for roads. But yeah, there's difference, but there's also some good benefits to it for longevity and things like that. So definitely something to check out and see what it's all about for sidewalks.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Well, I'm still, from a public safety standpoint, protection of life and property is a priority over sidewalk improvements. In my mind, it's unfortunate, but it's very clear. It's very clear in my mind. As a council, our major priority, our mandated priority is to provide adequate public safety services for our citizens. That includes law enforcement, fire, and the major public works infrastructure. Sidewalks are, I would consider them more of a minor public works infrastructure side. But our sidewalks definitely need to be addressed, and it needs to be upon the city, because the city in years past no longer, thank goodness, required tree replacement when sidewalks were replaced. When I replaced a good portion of my sidewalks, I had to plant trees from the approved city tree list. I chose Raywood ash. They're great trees, but what do trees do to sidewalks, curbs and gutters in the street, right? Roots, right? We know what they do. So that's silly. All right, we need to make that right for our citizens. So next year, sidewalks, streets, if there's an over-the-counter grant, I'd like to see us go for the gusto, whatever we can get. But the priority for this year, in my mind, should be fire apparatus replacement. That's protection of life and property for our citizens and our fire personnel.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
does this require, may I make a motion?
This is actually, this topic is direction to the council.
Okay.
So it could be by consensus or it could be by motion.
I would like to move that we direct our staff to prepare an over-the-counter CDBG application for the repair of the sidewalks for the city of Willows for the full and entire amount of the grant.
Mr. Vaughn's moved to approve a CDBG over-the-counter grant application for sidewalk repair. Correct, Mr. Vaughn? Do I have that right?
Correct. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Is there a second? Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that one.
Mr. Thomas has seconded the motion. Further discussion?
I just want to state that there's no bad option here. Either way, we're helping our citizens. You guys are talking about public safety and helping the people. Both options help the people. So I want to make sure that we're clear on that, that there really
Yeah,
is
there's no
no,
good or
there is
bad.
no bad
Just that we
choice. here.
always do fire.
We do always do fire. I'm just making sure that, the public's aware.
No good or bad.
There is no bad option here. It's just trying to choose which one we feel like we're gonna get the greatest good out of. So that was just my 2 cents. Want to make sure I threw out there that nobody was thinking that, there's a bad option here. There isn't, and it's a time-sensitive decision more than
It's an opportunity.
anything.
We've got an opportunity here.
So,
No, you're absolutely correct. Well said. I agree. I agree. It's just that my option, the way I see it, from a protection
You
of
have a
life and
motion
property.
on the floor.
We're having discussion right now, Mr. Vaughn. And after I'm finished speaking, I'll let my colleagues speak some more. I strongly urge this council to pursue fire apparatus engine replacement. I will be voting against this motion this evening. In the event of an emergency, I don't know who's going to be calling a sidewalk to come to your aid. So I'm not trying to be a smart aleck. I'm just being reasonable. Okay. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Mr. City Clerk, this will be a roll call vote, please. All those in favor? Well,
Wait.
Mr. City Clerk, this will be a roll call vote.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Councilmember Thomas,
Somehow I knew you were going to call me first.
just doing the right to left.
Yes.
Councilmember Vaden,
Yes,
Vice Mayor Hudson,
yes.
Mayor Hanson,
Nay. Matter carries 3-1. Sidewalks it is. Good luck, chief, with your fire apparatus.
I think Mr. Hudson said it best, though. I think that either way, the community will.
Very good. Well said.
Now we just have to get the grant. Be good.
Yes.
there is that.
Let's get
If they say no, then this was,
yeah.
Good discussion. Good.
Okay, moving on to item 8A. CAL FIRE Rural Fire Capacity Grant, consider adoption of a resolution authorizing the city manager or her designee to execute and accept $19,570 of grant funding through CAL FIRE's Rural Fire Capacity Grant, which requires a 50% local match of $19,570 using city funds that were already approved as part of the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget process. Marty Brown?
I'm going to just hand this right over to the fire chief to present on.
Very good. Marty, I always ask you first as the city manager. so
I
Chief
appreciate
Monk.
that.
Chief Monk.
Good evening again, council. I think this is the last time I got to talk to you tonight, so you won't get too much, have to hear from me too much more. This grant that we applied for was through CAL FIRE. It's a federally funded program. It's known as the Rural Fire Capacity Grant, or RFC. It's got a maximum award or maximum grant total of 40,000. That 40,000 is the total sum of the grant funds and the agency match. It's a 50-50 grant. This is a grant that comes up pretty much every year, at least my entire time in the fire service. And we've been very successful at getting them in the past. It can be used primarily for equipment and things like that. We were awarded $19,570. This is for 6 handheld radios, 1 mobile radio, and then 4 sets of wildland PPE. With this, these funds, it's pretty much going to finish out the update of our radio equipment. We have 1 more engine that needs a new mobile radio. That is it's a certain brand. It's a BK. It's what the state load goes on. So we can have all the statewide interoperability channels. And the 6 handhelds are also going to be BKs for the new Engine 5. So we have the proper radios for not only responding locally, but responding out mutual aid to other jurisdictions and on strike teams. This is I'm not going to say that this is going to be the last radio expense that you'll ever see, because the next, in 5 to 6 years, we're going to start looking at needing to replace some of the stuff that we bought 2-3 years ago. It's kind of the nature of the beast when it comes to fire equipment. It gets old, it gets worn out, it stops talking to other things, and in fire and in law enforcement, we have that no fail mission. And when we have things, we need it to work because not only our lives, but the community lives are dependent on it. And with that, if anybody has any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you, Chief. Questions, comments from the council? Who would like to begin?
So we're for PPE. So those are fairly expensive, are they not?
Yeah, so these are wildland sets. So this is what we'd wear. And we switched, when I became chief, we switched over from, we used to basically have structure gear, which are the big, heavy, bulky turnouts that you wear into structure fires, or vehicle accidents and things like that. And then we would have wildland gear, which was for responding to vegetation fires and things like that. We switched about 4 years ago, or we began the switch over to a garment called TechGen, and it's a dual purpose garment. So it's good for both wildland firefighting and responding to vehicle accidents and technical rescues. Why that's important is we see oftentimes more damage to our turnouts responding to extrications and rescues because they're getting cut on sharp metal and things like that versus actually going to fires. So the TechGen is a little bit more expensive than just straight regular old yellow Nomex, but it fills a second role. The other thing that's nice is it's a lot cooler, a lot lighter, a lot more mobility, especially in August, because it's 110 degrees. I was looking it up real quick math. You're looking at about with the helmet, goggles, shroud, pant, and coat, you're looking at about $1,000 per set.
Thank you, Chief.
And the mobile radio is installed in the fire truck, and the portable ones the firemen wear,
Yes.
as you have handheld and mobile radio. One would think that's the same thing, but it's not. So,
Yeah.
Thank you. That's it.
Vice Mayor Hudson.
No, I think Chief covered that pretty well. And Councilmember Thomas, I've been a volunteer there for almost 10 years, and I still get mobile and portable radios mixed up all the time. So I understand the confusion there. Nothing further.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Biden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Mr. Bonk, Chief Bonk, I was up at Elk Creek about a year ago, and there was the acquisition of quite a few radios that were shared amongst the agencies that were present. I believe that was grant funded. And my compliments for your ability, because as I recall, you got that grant that benefited all of those folks. So I don't know if you want to elaborate a little bit on that process or how that goes or
Yeah,
how it fits into this one. That's really,
that was, that was a tricky one. That ended up being two separate grants. So the first grant that I wrote was to the, Tibisart Foundation. And, we looped it in. The first grant was a regional grant, between all the districts in, the county. And it was for $10,000, and it wasn't for radios. It was for, emergency pagers. These little guys that we carry. So we got the first $10,000 awarded from the Tibisart Foundation. But we put in the grant application that we were then going to take that 10 grand of non-federalized funds, private funds, and leverage it against a USDA application. And we used that $10,000 as the match. So we went from being able to get 20 pagers to, I want to say 80 something. And then we turned around and did a USDA application using that $10,000 as match, and were awarded. And so we were able to give everybody more pagers than what we thought.
congrats.
Anything further, David?
No, thank you.
Very good. Anything further, Rick?
No.
No. Effective radio communications and PPE. I mean, it's a pretty simple question. It's needed equipment. It prevents injuries and keeps personnel safe and alive. So it's kind of a no-brainer. That's all I had to say. Thank you for bringing this matter forward, Chief. And excellent work on your equipment replacement, especially with the, well, various fire apparatus and tools, but, especially radio communications and the like. So any public comment in reference to this matter? Any public comment? No? Okay, very good. This is a resolution. Pleasure of the council.
I move the resolution of the city council authorizing the city manager or her designee to accept the rural fire capacity grant from CAL FIRE in the amount of $19,570 with matching funds in the amount of $19,570 for a total of $39,140, and to execute all contract documents relating to accepting the grant be approved.
Councilmember Thomas.
Second.
Councilmember Thomas has moved to approve the resolution as presented, attached to item 8A. Vice Mayor Hudson has the second. Further discussion? Mr. City Clerk, this will be a roll call vote. If it's a resolution, please.
Councilmember Thomas,
Aye.
Councilmember Bodden,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hudson,
Aye.
Mayor Hanson.
Aye. Matter carries unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. Moving on to item 8B, retail cannabis business zoning and setback requirements. Oh, yes. Yes, Evan, go ahead. Would you like, need a break?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, my ears on.
Sorry.
You know what? It'd be a perfect time to take a 10-minute recess at this time. We'll reconvene at 7:45. Well, good evening. Again, it's still Tuesday, September 10th, 2024. The time is 7:43 PM. We're reconvening a couple minutes early back into regular session. Moving on to item 8B, retail cannabis business zoning and setback requirements. The City Council this evening is going to provide direction to staff on one of the following 4 options to potentially improve the opportunity and likelihood that retail cannabis businesses may locate in Willows. Item B1, one of 4 options is B1, to modify zones that retail cannabis businesses are allowed to operate with a conditional use permit and reduce the setback distance that retail cannabis businesses may operate from schools to 600 feet in reference to preschools through 12th grade. That pertains to preschool through 12th grade in Corinne. Second option, item B2, only modify zones and leave the current setback distance as is at 1,000 feet. Third option, item B3, reduce the setback from 1,000 feet to 600 feet, except for preschool through 12th grade, and leave the available zoning for retail cannabis businesses as is, or fourth option, item B4, make no changes to the zoning or setback distances already approved by the council at the May 28th, 2024 City Council meeting. Should the council direct staff to move forward with option 1, 2, or 3, staff will return to council at a later date with an action item based on the direction. This evening, Community Development Services Director Joe Betancourt will be presenting, but before I turn it over to Joe, Marty, do you have any comments?
I do not. I'm going to hand this over to Joe
Very
Betancourt
good.
immediately.
Good evening. Just a point on the recommendation here. We do have a typo on the reduce the setback from 1,000 to 600 feet, except for preschool. That is just example preschool. So it'd be reducing the setback from 1,000 to 600 feet from schools. With that said, I'll give a little bit of history on how we got where we're at currently. At the May 28th, 2024 City Council meeting, a resolution was passed that eliminated setback requirements from licensed daycares, schools, playgrounds, and parks, but retained 1,000-foot setback requirement for schools. So we're currently at 1,000-foot setback requirement from schools. And that's preschool through 12th grade. We were directed to take the zoning to the planning commission to see if there was interest from them on opening up additional zoning or altering the zoning in any way. The planning commission voted to not alter the zoning. So we're bringing that information back to you. So the currently allowed zones are as they were originally adopted, and with a conditional use permit, you can operate a retail cannabis business in highway commercial zone, which is the orange color off both our freeway exits 162 and 57. In the mixed use zones of general commercial, light industrial, and planned development. That's the purple zone in South Willows and also out to the west by Walmart. And the third zone that you currently can operate a retail cannabis business is general commercial / planned development. And this is a hard color to differentiate on your color handouts, but it is below the highway commercial zone to the south of Wood Street along Humboldt. So that would be the empty parcels, and I believe where Casa Ramos is located. So with our 1,000-foot setback requirement, like we currently have it from schools, we did still limit the available developed land that's off of Humboldt. So that's why we wanted to bring the option to both look at the zoning requirements of opening those up and the setback limit. If it was adjusted to 600 feet, it would open up the availability of the highway commercial zones to the west of Humboldt Avenue, kind of where the Starbucks area is. Allowing additional zoning would open up developed land, as I stated. And this would eliminate the cost of new construction, which is a major incentive for attracting a retail cannabis business. The zones that, there's also potential to drive customers from I-5 closer to other businesses, which could mean increased revenue. General commercial, central commercial, and light industrial are three possibilities that we want to bring up. These currently align with existing zoning and are mostly a part of the mixed uses that are currently allowed. We see light industrial in one of the mixed use zones and also general commercial in the mixed use zones. And with that, it would just open up all of those zones, or, from central commercial to downtown, kind of runs out towards Highway 99. And then general commercial opens up to the north and south of that, all the way out to the edge of town. And then light industrial is on the other side of the railroad tracks and kind of borders that Humboldt from Wood to Laurel Street section. So with that, I'd be open for any questions.
Thank you, Joe, for the presentation. Council members who would like to begin, questions, comments?
We've had this here before. And the discussion centered around cannabis being a legal product and a legal business within the state of California. And I know a lot of folks were, at the time we had the meeting before, were concerned about the use and sale of marijuana for smoking, but the cannabis dispensary operates a lot more than just sale of tobacco or marijuana for the purposes of smoking. So I think there's some value in that. I also believe that the city needs to promote growth and promote businesses. And I would like to see us be more open to all businesses that would want to come to Willows. I know this is a hot topic for many folks. It runs to a social issue for whether it's right or wrong, sale of tobacco, sale of marijuana, sale of alcohol. It's kind of, when it comes to cannabis, I look at more like it's the, what we did with alcohol during Prohibition. That's kind of all went away. It seems logical to me, and what I was hoping that the planning commission would do when we pass this back to them would be open up the central commercial so we could drive more folks downtown for more foot traffic. So I would like to see us at least open the downtown area. Open for that. It's, we have a ordinance that allows cannabis sale businesses. The way it was constructed with the 1,000-foot setback from everything, basically eliminated it from the city of Willows. So it was, we approved on one hand and took it away on the other. By reducing the setback from the schools, it opened up some, but now that we see a map that's 600 feet or 1,000 feet, all of Butte Street and Sycamore Street up to Highway 99 is very limited what can happen. So I think it would be logical for us to open the central commercial and general commercial district to the sale of cannabis businesses opportunities.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Vaughn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the legality of the product that's being discussed and to be sold within jurisdictions and within, my gosh, you look at that. Those are the rules you have to follow in that example. Good thing they don't do that for meat and potatoes. But anyway, so what we're dealing with here is social mores, the values that we hold in personally and as groups on what should and should not be done by humans in groups or individually and otherwise. This process has gone on in history over and over again. It almost always ends up in the domain of the majority, meaning that if the group, the public, the people, the society want something to happen, then it ultimately does. And yes, there are minor groups, minority groups who will continue to object on basis of what they believe to be right and wrong, usually socially right and wrong. And again, the process has happened before. Dealing with government and the administration of the city or a county or a state based on personal opinions and factors, not of the majority. You just cannot let this level of administration operate at the city level. We have an obligation to do what this community, what the majority, what the rules and the laws say. And by that, I submit that Mr. Thomas is on the right track, that we will never win an argument with somebody on whether cannabis, marijuana, back in the day, alcohol, you name it, is right or wrong or should not be done. The reality is they do get done and they do proceed forward, and it's called change. And this is a form of change that we can stick our head in the sand and feet in the mud, but in reality, it's the best for us all to move on and move forward. My opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. Mr. Hudson?
I believe my two colleagues up here have said everything that kind of needs to be said on this. To me, I look at it like it's kind of like, are you in politics? You're never going to change the other person's opinion. When it comes to this discussion item, I did hope that this one would be coming back from the planning commission, that they would, be able to see where the city council wanted to go with this and help us out with it. But it is back here. And so now we have a decision to make as to which option to go with. But I have nothing further to say other than what I had said in my prior my prior statement last time this was at this diocese.
Thank you, Evan. I'm in the minority here, as I was at our previous meeting when we discussed this matter earlier this year. And my thoughts remain identical to what they were in 2017 and 2018. The council at the time, and I was a member of the council, and staff worked, put a lot of effort, time and effort, and, thought into the current ordinances that are on the books right now. Moving forward, and of course, and I agree with the gentleman here, and with your comments. I completely agree, and I understand where you're coming from. But my mind, I haven't wavered whatsoever. We're following the law, the state of California, not the federal government, but the state of California, with our current ordinances. It's a big pill for me to swallow to vote to approve the 2017 and 2018 ordinances as written, based on what I've done for a living. Won't go into that, David. David, you mentioned that too. That's a personal preference. I don't think marijuana is a cure-all, but that's just my opinion. I was opposed to eliminating the setbacks at our May 28th, 2024 meetings. And one of the few times I've ever voted along with Mr. Sprague, it was a 3-2 vote. We were in the minority not to eliminate the 1,000-foot setbacks. And Rick, yeah, your comments on our 1,000-foot setbacks limited, the cannabis retail businesses, which this current legislation allows for a maximum of 2 into the, basically the Ken Road 57, Tama Street area, parts of South Willows, and also freeway frontage. May 20, 2024, as we all know, and Joe spoke, those setbacks were eliminated to a great extent. To a great extent, I'm just opposed to any further changes whatsoever with the current ordinance as written. I know I'm in the minority here. I'm not stuck in the past. I'm not living in the past. No one's accused me of that, but those are my thoughts. And David, you're so right. This is as a republic, it's a representative form of government. And I'm talking to our constituents. There are a large number of our constituents that are opposed to any further changes of the ordinance. There are also a large number that are in support and don't really care about changes. I mean, marijuana is a different animal than it was, 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. But those are my thoughts on it. I haven't wavered. I'm not going to waver this evening either. But like I said, I'm in the minority, so I really have nothing further to say. Before we go back to further council discussion, I'd like to open it up to the public present
I'd like to
tonight.
hear from them.
And anybody from our audience have anything to say, please approach the podium, share your thoughts. Thank you. Evening, Jason.
Jason Grant, 30-year resident of this area. Glad to be here tonight. I appreciate all of you, and I admire you as individuals as well, and who you are as people. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to come up here, because not only do we have a chance to talk about this, we actually could also go back to what it originally was when the city did a lot of research and asked the public and did a lot of work, which you mentioned, Gary, to get the public input on what it should be. And that's what the constituents had decided. The disappointing thing from our last meeting was the constituents, the people that came forward and spoke, all spoke for keeping it where it was. The only people that were in favor of changing it was the government. And so in that instance, what we saw is the government was pushing its will on the people instead of the people pushing its will on the government. And it feels the same way again, that this isn't a community-driven conversation. This is a government-driven conversation that's going against what the will of the people had said back in 2017. And so what I want to do is caution you on opening up what the government's wanting to do instead of supporting what the public has asked you to do. And what the public said back then, and then reaffirmed in all of the conversations that came forward, was that we like the boundaries the way that they are. That we understand that this is a controversial issue and we don't want to bring the controversy to our front doors. One of the things that you brought up is bringing in more business. But what this does is when you bring a controversial business into an area, the businesses around it now suffer. Because now there's a section of people that say, I really don't want to go into that area of town. I don't want to take my children to that area of town. I don't want to be doing business in that area of town. And that's what would be the byproduct of something like that. I have a gym. And if a cannabis dispensary opened next door, it would impact the young students who come to my gym. It would change the dynamic of the neighborhood. It would cause my gym to suffer because parents wouldn't want their children to go in there. And so there is a byproduct of opening this up because it is controversial. And it does have the impact to damage the business culture of that. It will change it. Suddenly I'm looking at putting a restaurant, but now maybe there's this business here. I don't want to compete with that. I don't want to put my business in this section of town because it's controversial. And so what we've done is we've now opened the door for controversy to exist within our city, and businesses that we want to come in now are having second thoughts. So it doesn't do that. And I know one of the options was sales tax. It's got the opportunity. Well, one of the things you could do, one of the ways that this is done, already there's delivery services for people who want cannabis products. You could go ahead and charge a tax on businesses, and they need a business license to do delivery in this area. And you could recoup the sales tax through that kind of regulation, allowing the cannabis to be done on a delivery basis without having to impact the culture of a neighborhood. So there are options to do that. I'm not saying that this isn't there, but what I'm saying is that we're at the front edge of a change, and that change will change the culture and it will change the environment, and it will have a negative effect. It's not going to have a positive effect when a change comes. It's going to have a negative effect to a business culture that's already suffering. And that's what I want you to realize is it's not just about cannabis, it's about the culture that we have. I'm also a pastor, and I'm dealing with parents whose kids are now wrestling with THC-laced candies because that's some of the products that are put in there. Like you said, it's not just being smoked, it's being sold as candy. And so what does candy target? It doesn't target someone in their 30s. It's targeting someone in their early teens. And this is like taking a loaded gun and just setting it in the cupboard. It's kind of out of sight, but it's still easily accessible. And so having these dispensaries doesn't, you can go ahead and say, well, you have to be over a certain age to have it. Yeah, that really works for our high school students in alcohol right now. There's an availability that comes when you go ahead and allow these kinds of things to come in. And it's not just a matter of cannabis, it's a matter of what does the public want? And what the public has told you is we want boundaries. We want protection, and we want a culture that promotes business that all people can come to, not just a select few. In the future, it may change, but right now it's still controversial. And right now it will have a negative effect on a business climate if that comes to a downtown area or it comes to an area that's populated where children, like my gym, frequent. And so I'm asking you, listen to what the people have said. No one in the community has come up here and said, we really want this to come. It's coming because the staff has been directed to find a way to increase revenue. And I appreciate that. I think that's a noble cause. But what happens is this is not the best avenue for that to happen. It's important for us to realize that it's not just about the money, it's about the values that we support. It's about the climate that we want to have happening. And there is a negative byproduct of this type of business affecting the culture of our community. Because I get to deal with it as a pastor on the backside. I get to deal with it with the pain and suffering that it causes behind the curtain. Sure, it looks fun, but there's a repercussion. And I'm asking you, protect the vulnerable ones, protect the culture, make it so that our businesses can do business well without having to worry about, I have a bad tenant next door. You know, Rick, you talked about last time we were here, how clean and nice the facility was that you visited, and that's great. There are those, but in Willows, we unfortunately have a higher probability of a seedy one showing up. And now we have this seedy business that's legally here and it's negatively affecting the business. You talked about a safe place for people to acquire their drugs, but the thing is it's still unregulated. There's no guarantee that the product that's coming out of here isn't slightly laced with fentanyl. And even with the idea of taxes on it, it's a cash-based business. So we can't be certain that the numbers that are being reported are accurate. There's a lot of holes in the business model that's there right now, and the public is not asking for that to come. And so as the city council, you can go ahead and say, yeah, we're just not ready for that. The industry is not mature enough yet for us to risk the culture of our community on this. One day maybe, but the industry's not there. It's still not federally legal. It's just not ready. It's just not time. The business model, let somebody else be the experiment, not us. 5 years, it may mature and we can have a different conversation, but we're not at that place now. And right now we need a council that is willing to defend the culture of our town and the will of what the people have expressed every time this issue has come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Good evening.
It's Margaret Sharkey. I've spoken before. I've been a property owner here for a long time, dealing with your downtown. And actually, what I want to say first off is it's a very emotional response Pastor has, but it's not based in fact. You should look at the facts. I can provide them to you, what cannabis dispensary does to downtown businesses and does to local community. So first of all, I just
Can I ask you real quick to pull the mic down so I can?
sorry about that.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
yes. So, I just wanted to, first off, to say that the city council and planning commission have exhibited prudence and forethought in determining the pathway forward related to permitting two dispensaries in the city of Willows. As the complex cannabis industry has matured, its grown innovation and expansion has reflected positive effects. These include revenue, providing a safe outlet for tested, consistent cannabis products, ensuring compassionate care for veterans, seniors, and other vulnerable medical patients, helping to reduce opioid consumption and expanding medical research. To illustrate the normalization of retail dispensaries, Bank of America, along with the NRA and MasterCard, have been lobbying on the Secure and Fair Enforcement Regulation Safer Bank Act, also known as the Marijuana Banking Act. This indicates that B of A is advocating for changes to federal law to provide legal certainty and regulatory clarity for banks serving cannabis industry. Retail sustainability and growth for the downtown business area comes down literally to the number of people willing to travel off I-5 to the downtown area. On June 11th, 2003, the City of Willows Downtown Revitalization Plan was published with a goal of bringing shoppers to the struggling downtown. It produced a revitalization plan that would be merchant-driven. However, more than 2 decades later, many downtown businesses are still struggling. With City Council approval of the Central Commercial Zone as a permitted dispensary location, the downtown commercial area will become more retail driven. It will become a more retail driven valuable asset. Businesses in the central commercial zone will benefit from increased traffic, and ultimately the city will generate additional tax revenue through increased sales and new business openings. Staff recommendation to allow a cannabis retail dispensary in the central commercial zoning has been made with thoughtful consideration and based on the May 28th, 2004 adopted resolution, which removed the setbacks. The city council's inclusion of the central commercial district as a permitted zone for a retail dispensary would be appropriate. I have seen the downtown struggle. I have seen businesses come and go because they cannot make it. The revenue is not there. And I've witnessed this over the last 20 years. 2003 is when you had your revitalization plan. It hasn't changed. Businesses close because there is not retail-driven traffic to the downtown. That's a fact. The city of Willows approved 2 dispensaries. The ideal location, of course, is on the highway corridor. That will be your biggest dispensary, but allowing a dispensary downtown will also help downtown retail expand. So careful consideration needs to be given to that. The cannabis business has really changed over the last 3 years, and it is one of the most highly regulated businesses that you can find. It's regulated by city, state, county, and the city set their rules, and you guys have set very clear and specific rules on how a dispensary will be run, and it's not be run by a CD outlet. That doesn't happen anymore. It's too regulated, and it wouldn't happen. Here, it would provide for the ability for seniors, for people who rely on this medication to have safe access. So I'm recommending to give thoughtful and careful consideration, as the city of Willows has done, and council and planning, to allow for changing in zoning for the dispensaries. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
comments.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Anything?
Lori Pride. I'm always somewhat procedural, and I was at the planning commission meeting when it was brought before them to consider changing the zoning. And they said no. They had public there who said no. And I think staff told you, what did I hear tonight? Just that they said no. Did you get any more information from anybody about what the planning commission said? What their conversations were?
I did not receive any
Okay.
information, Lori, no.
So a lot of the concern was not that it would be helpful. It was more, there's concerns over the use, but the concerns were more about what is the look of these going to be. And again, if they're heavily regulated by the cities, what's the security measures? So if we're going to go into existing buildings in our downtown or in our general commercial areas, what's required for security? You drive in other towns and those are bars on windows. Is that the look that, this is the discussion from the planning commission. Is this the look that we're going to have? We talk about design review all the time. We talk about conditional use permits all the time. We put conditions on our businesses all the time. I would say we don't manage those very much any of the time. So I think the concern is that with a small staff, with our lack of code enforcement, with our, we have the desire to do things and generate retail, but I don't believe we've been demonstrated that we have the capacity as a city to put conditions on them and follow up to make sure that we're adhering to that standard that we want to see. I have literally talked to businesses in the downtown that have said if it comes, they're probably going to retire and close because they don't see where City of Willows has a vision to do something better. And I applaud you for having a vision of economic development, but to me, that doesn't mean any business, no matter what we can get to generate any revenue, no matter what. And that's what it's starting to feel like. I feel like when you said, what a bummer that the planning commission didn't help you guys out by agreeing to change the zoning and now it's back to you. I would say there's a huge disconnect between you and your planning commission. They weren't involved in your goal setting. They don't know what you're thinking. They can come to your meetings, but I know council members are discouraged from going to theirs because you're the appeal board. But there's a huge disconnect in what the vision for our community looks like. And so you're going to continue to see the planning commission go in a direction, it gets appealed, you reverse it. It's not a good look. Again, I keep saying that for the city. We need to get on the same page. If we're going to grow, part of that is making our community look better and have people start taking pride in it. I'm grateful for the sidewalk discussion because I think when people start seeing something positive happening, that's just a step in the right direction and getting more things going on. So this decision to change zoning and start allowing a use into our central commercial area to generate possibly some revenue, I would give it careful consideration because you might just be trading off one business for another. And if it's a look we want is to have mini marts and dispensaries and things downtown, I'm not shopping downtown anymore. I mean, it's just me. But are people really going to drive off the freeway to go to a dispensary when they're everywhere? Are they going to drive off the freeway to go to a mini mart? Maybe they'll go to get a taco out of a taco truck or a food truck. But literally the decisions we're making in the name of economic development, I'm concerned. So I would say, listen to your planning commission. When they have discussion and they recommend no, it'd be nice to give some credit to that voice. And if you don't understand why, maybe ask the question. I too, what Jason Grant shared, I've seen staff pushing a lot of their goals and objectives, which I get that. That's how the city runs, is through staff. But when the public's here, they're saying completely the opposite. And so the public's saying one thing and staff's recommendation is the other direction. We're losing our community because we're not listening to them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comments, Lori. And just real briefly, Lori, in reference to your comments about security measures, the current ordinance goes into extensive detail in reference to security measures with the, yeah. Absolutely. It's all within the current ordinance. So I just wanted to make that point. So thank you very much for your comments. Any other public comments? Any other public comments? None? Okay, last call? No? Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for your input and your participation. Council members, comments, thoughts? Anything additional?
I understand, Jason, your points. And I worry about that myself. I've traveled to and visited and toured in other cities just as a tourist. Walked down streets that have cannabis dealers, and I have not, and I specifically stopped because this was on the agenda before. Didn't see anybody hesitate at all around that business. I didn't see it in Fort Bragg, didn't see it in Chico, didn't see it in Reading, just to name a few of the places that I've stepped and watched. It does not seem to be a deterrent to the people on the street. What formulated some of my thought process on this. If children are getting cannabis products, we have to blame the parent because they can't go into that store and get it that way. There's too much regulation. You have to show a driver's license. The one that I visited, because I wanted to see how they actually looked, required you to show your driver's license in order to get in, and they limited the number of people that you could actually be in the store at any given time. So regulations is pretty strong for it. It does concern me that you believe it will have a negative effect on your business, and it concerns me, Lori, that somebody might close up shop and retire because they don't like that business downtown. I also don't like the fact that we have so many empty storefronts. And not every business is good business. But it just seems to me, well, you raise valued points. And so I had thoughts coming into this. I had thoughts before, and I leaned one way or the other way, and you've stirred those same thoughts. I also understand from Margaret, having read the ordinance, and it's not easy to read. One thing I didn't realize when I joined the council that I would have so much to read, and try to understand and digest and remember. There's a lot of regulations about what can and can't go on and how it's protected. So, I'll leave it here and defer to my fellow council member.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Hudson?
I made a couple of notes based off the comments that I heard. One was that there's nobody here standing up for this. And one of the reasons why I know that any of the people that I know of that would use a facility like this are afraid. They're afraid of the negative connotations of being somebody that uses this product. They're afraid of being labeled as the pothead or that person, even though they're upstanding business people or they're hard workers, or no matter what their history is or what they've done in a positive way. Once they're labeled a pothead, it has a negative connotation amongst this community. Okay. I was kind of looking at this a little bit, and we discussed, it's unregulated, but actually it's heavily regulated. It's one of the most regulated substances that we offer. The culture of our town. The culture of our town is we will not allow a cannabis store within these areas on these maps. However, did we realize that we allowed a gun store within 200 feet of our schools? But we're not going to allow a cannabis dispensary, right? We're going to make that discretion. Why? Because we're used to guns here, right? I'm an avid hunter. I own firearms. I teach my kids the safety of firearms, right? I make sure that they're safe in what they use and what they do to make sure that they understand what's right and wrong. Okay, as far as kids getting their hands on legal, illegal drugs, things like that, that's up to me as a parent to make sure that I teach my kids those same lessons, just as I did with firearms. Okay, cannabis is no different. Okay, it's a lot less lethal, right? But yeah, we're going to allow businesses like that to be so close to our schools and things like that, but we're going to argue so heavily on this. Right now, that business did close down. It was next to the Sierra Credit Union. It did close down. It's no longer there. Wasn't making it in our town. But that's just one of the examples that comes to my mind when people say the culture of our town. I heard bars on windows. Well, one of our tobacco stores had bars on their windows. So it's not just cannabis stores that are bringing that in. It's any business, right? And that's not due to necessarily the type of business. Is based on the fact that has a product that's easily stolen and sold somewhere else, right? It's easy for them to break into, fill their pockets or their bags and escape with. And then another comment that I heard was that the cannabis places are everywhere. So that kind of goes against that same argument that they are everywhere. This isn't new. In 2017, it was brand spanking new. And it was scary. Truth be told, Councilmember Thomas laid it out correctly. He's been into how many stores? Half a dozen.
5.
Looked at, right? And they're respectable places. I've done the same. I understand the idea of the shadier looking ones, right? That's up to still us as the local government, right? That is apparently pushing this issue. To make sure that doesn't happen, to make sure that we're holding them to a higher standard of making it look respectable. And again, this comes down to government oversight in my standpoint, is that this is us not allowing or not favoriting the idea of capitalism, and that we're not favoriting the idea of free commerce, and that we're limiting people to what they can and cannot have access to, and what they can and cannot have a business when it's legal. We're saying it's a legal business, but we're going to control this. We're going to say, no, you can't do this. Okay, that to me, that is not speaking to capitalism. That is not speaking to a free America. That is not speaking to how we want this ran. Okay, we have regulations in place to control how these businesses are ran, but we should not be saying, hey, you know what, it is legal for us to have this, but we're going to say no to it. because we're afraid and we don't understand it. Okay. That's, like I said, those are just my couple notes on it. And based off of what I have heard. And so with that, I'm going to let my colleagues speak and go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Mr. Bodden?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to state for the record, I'm not on this issue based on revenue. Not going to do this to make money for the city. It may, and I hope that it does. But to me, it's about the rights of the people. The rights of people to engage in a business, the rights of people to purchase that which they choose as long as it's legal and done in the right way, proper way, legal way. And again, marijuana, cannabis, all of this is changing. The values of the society are changing. The way that it's distributed is changing. The medical opinions about it and the legal opinions about it have changed and are changing. And the population that we represent, while we have had spokespersons here who have expressed a view, we have a lot of other humans, citizens, constituents who have other views. So again, it's not about money, not about that. It's about, to me, the rights of the people and all of the people involved.
Thank you, David. Anything further? No, thank you. Very good. No, I appreciate everyone's comments. Appreciate your public input, definitely. Jason, I wholeheartedly agree with almost everything you said. You know, my reasons for that aren't based on any scientific research. They're based on 46 years in law enforcement and what I've seen and what I've dealt with related to THC. Again, I mean, those are my thoughts. All right. Just throw that out there. The current legislation in our city ordinance that became legislation in 2017, 2018. It's very stringent legislation, very stringent, and rightly so, and it should be. And absolutely, the cannabis business in the state of California is extremely heavily regulated. Absolutely, by the state of California and by local ordinance. And in Willow's case, extremely heavily regulated by local ordinance, which is, I think, the right thing to do. In my mind, allowing the current legislation allowing the up to two dispensaries, basically in a freeway frontage area, South Willows, that's yet to be completely developed, as we know, in the freeway frontage areas. I'm not changing my stance on that at all. I think that is exactly what we should be doing. I'm very satisfied with the current ordinance as written. It is stringent, like I've said. Security measures are extremely stringent as well in our current ordinances and should be, and should remain that way. It is a big business. I mean, it is the successful dispensaries are what I would call a very clean operation. In my mind, that's not an operation I'd want in our downtown areas or close to schools and the like. But we made this council made its modifications in May 28th, 2024 meeting. And as a Republican legislative body, I support the majority of the council, even though I voted in the minority. I support that and moving forward. And that's why we're here. That's why there are 5 members on this council, different opinions and backgrounds and thoughts and concerns. And it works well and it keeps things working well. And we can sit here and discuss calmly and debate and arrive at a majority consensus, decision and walk away and to the next meeting and take it up again. That's the way it works, right? Right. But I haven't changed my position on my original thoughts. I recommend that option 4 to make no changes to the zoning or setback distances already approved by the city council at the May 28, 2024 city council meeting. And that's really all I had to say, but I really appreciate the discussion and the public input on this. Gentlemen, further thoughts? Who would like to go?
my thoughts are to table this until we have a full council. As I'm sitting here thinking on this, there's 4 of us. We have 5 of us here. And that is my 2 cents is to table this conversation until we have a full council here that can hear it.
Very good, Mr. Hudson. Mr. Button?
I would make a motion that we adopt item number 1, and I know that I'm supposed to read these motions based on certain set structures, but I don't have it in front of me.
That's very, so, Mr. Vaughn has moved to, approve item 1, option 1, which is modify zones that retail cannabis businesses are allowed to operate with a conditional use permit and reduce the setback distance the retail cannabis businesses may operate from schools to 600 feet e.g. preschool through 12th grade . Is there a second?
Before can I ask a clarifying question?
Absolutely. Mr. Thomas, yes.
Referring to adding what zones? I'm leaving that for staff to figure. Central commercial, general commercial? Looks to me like multi-jurisdiction.
I thought item 1 was sufficient in it as a motion, is it not?
We would need clarification on which zones to allow. So the recommended ones would be light industrial, central commercial, or general commercial are the 3 that were listed in there. But
All 3 or 1 or both or 2.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Light industrial is
light industrial would be just to the east.
west of the, or east of the railroad track?
Correct.
Target zone is Humboldt.
Well, it's Humboldt or central commercial.
So Joe, light industrial, what was number 2?
General commercial or central commercial is the 3 packet.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And it all would still require a use permit, correct?
Oh, correct. Yes. And whatever setback limit was established.
Mr. Vaughn, would you like to amend your motion
I amend it
to include
to include what he said.
the 3 options?
Yes, sir.
all
So-
3 zones.
So Mr. Vaughn's motion would be option 1, to modify zones that retail cannabis businesses are allowed to operate with a conditional use permit and reduce the setback distance that retail cannabis businesses may operate from schools to 600 feet that would pertain to preschool through 12th grade to include light industrial, general commercial, and central commercial. Correct, Mr.
Thank you. That is correct.
Motion. Is there a second?
Yeah. Second.
Councilmember Thomas has the second. Further discussion? Any discussion?
I don't think having all 5 of us present is a likely probability between now and most of the end of the year.
Okay, very good. There's a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. Mr. City Clerk, this will be a roll call vote, please.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Councilmember Bodden,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hudson,
I hadn't made up my mind yet. Obviously.
You can abstain.
We can come back to your vote. Go ahead and continue, Mr. City Clerk.
Mayor Hanson,
Nay.
Vice Mayor Hudson,
Yes.
Motion carries option 1, 3-1. With light industrial, general commercial, and central commercial. Is that clear, staff?
Yes, it is.
Very good, thank
you.
you. Thanks again for your input tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 9, comments and reports, city council, item 9A, city council correspondence. I have received no correspondence. Marty, is there any further correspondence?
We don't have any. We don't have any.
No, very good, thank you. Item 9B, city council comments and reports. Mr. Thomas.
I don't have a report. I just had a question of staff. Have we heard from Mr. Sprague on his update of the directional and wayfinding signs?
No, we have not heard any, there have been no updates from Councilmember Sprague.
Would you follow up with him, please?
Certainly.
That's all.
Okay, Thank you. Thank you, Rick. Councilmember Vaughn.
No particular major report. However, I am curious and would like to address at some point the suggestion that the planning commission and the city council are significantly out of sync. Now, I'm assuming based on the presentation that there's some credibility to that. So if that is the case, I don't know what the normal procedure would be. Obviously, we should not be in, perfect sync because then there's no need for them. I mean, so I don't quite know what was addressed, but I had heard that from another source that the planning commission is, I don't know, is that right just to say out of sync or something with the council? Is there a way?
Can I comment on that if
Yes.
that's all right?
Yes,
Please, as the
please.
council. So I would just say
Thank
that, we're looking at some other options in terms of our, excuse me.
Excuse me.
Excuse us.
Yeah, thank you.
Feel free, you can go outside and talk if you want to talk some more. We're looking at other options in terms of our planning services at this time. And I hope to come back to the council on the 24th. And I think that will provide some opportunity to bring the council and the planning commission into closer consistency. One of the things that we've heard repeatedly is about additional training and some understanding of what the planning commission's responsibility and purview is. And I think that we will be able to provide that without short of sending them to the Planning Commission Academy that's offered by the league, which would be probably $10,000 for 5 people to go to. If they go to Monterey or Southern California. So, we've not offered that before to the Planning Commission because it's pretty costly. But I think that we can use our contract planner to provide some training in a special meeting and help the Planning Commission to, understand a little bit better what their responsibilities, roles, and purview are. And hopefully also improve our Planning Commission staff reports and explanations to the Planning Commission and helping them to make an informed decision. And I think some of that it's not going to be perfect, but some of that will go a long way, I think, to help sync up the Planning Commission and the City Council.
Yeah, thank you, Morgan.
Thank you. And I know that everyone makes mistakes and that there was a problem or a challenge that occurred in a particular situation. But again, the suggestion is that I like what you're saying, Marty. Thank you. I hope we can pursue it.
To come very soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to elaborate briefly on that, several years ago, the previous administration, and mind you, our city team is a completely new set of team members, all the way across the board. We're not here, but before Marty Brown and Joe and Joanne and the entire team were employed by the city of Willows.
And Chief.
That's right, the entire team. Direction was provided to the then city manager to provide training to the planning commission members, which I had assumed, of course, we know what assume begins with the first 3 letters, right? But I'd assumed that had continued. However, that had not continued from administration to administration. So I feel it's a training issue, absolutely. And Marty, thank you. And we had some internal discussions initially that will eventually come before the council about rectifying that situation. So very good. So thank you, David, for bringing that up. So thank you, Marty. Anything further, Dave?
No, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Hudson.
No, I'd just like to thank everybody that attended today and their comments. A little bit about me. I took this position for the future of my kids. So any decision I make up here is not made without them being the forefront of my thought, as far as a safety standpoint goes. So any decisions that, I do make up here, I hope you understand, I am making them thinking of how do I want my kids to grow up? What do I want them raised around? And leads to a lot of interesting conversations when you have a 13, 12, and a 4-year-old. And it's going to keep leading to those. So, but I'm taking that challenge on as a parent and hopefully trying to guide them in the right directions to make the good choices that they need to make. So I don't want anybody to think that, they're falling on deaf ears. Everything that I hear is taken in and taken account of. So, but I do appreciate the people that do come in and do speak. And I do enjoy hearing, the public's opinion and things like that. So As far as the planning commission thing, I think that's a great idea. I would like to see that from now on, any new council or new planning members do get to go to that training. I know it's a cost, but I know I went to the new city manager, or sorry, city council member training, and that was very eye-opening for me as well. But if we do have our in-house person do a training, I'd love to participate in that so that as a council member, I understand what they're looking at and what they're doing as well. You know, don't want to have a deep understanding of their job, but you know, at least being able to understand the first 4 pages of a 100-page book gives you an idea of what's going on. Get through the table of contents and you understand the rest of it, at least from a 30,000-foot perspective. So that's all I got.
Very good. Thank you, Evan.
There's one other thing I wanted to mention about the planning commission, if I could. Both the city attorney and I had discussed a while ago about actually doing another one of the trainings that we did with the council a little over a year ago. After the election, there'll be a new council, and that maybe doing a joint meeting with the planning commission and the council for that sort of legal training, if you will, would be a great time for the council to both formally and kind of informally interact with the planning commission. So that wouldn't replace the other training I'm talking about, because there's very specific training to being a planning commissioner, but there's a Brown Act, you know, Rosenberg's rules, all of that kind of thing that both parties use, both the council and the planning commission. So that's something else that we could do as well. And I think it would be really beneficial.
Yes. Very good.
Is it possible for us to meet together, the planning commission and the city council in some form?
Yes, it is.
That I would really think would be a nice start, just to get to know each other better. You
Yeah,
know,
we did
like
that
what
for the
Evan
general
just
plan
did,
update.
You know, where are you
Um,
coming from kind of stuff, back and forth.
I mean, we could figure out exactly what that would look like. So, sorry, Carolyn.
Yeah,
That's okay. I just
Counselor-
I
Counselor.
can't see you, Marty, so I didn't know you were still talking. I'm sorry.
Right. Did you want to say something?
I was just gonna answer Councilmember Vaden's question. Yes, you could either do it in a joint meeting or you can do just a training. We can hold a training and elected officials can and appointed officials can all go to the training and not be in violation of the Brown Act. So it could be either way, whatever the pleasure of the council is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you.
Anything further, Marty? David?
No, thank you.
Okay, all right, very good. Just briefly, I only have one item to report on. That was this afternoon at 1:30. We had our monthly regular meeting of the Glen Groundwater Authority Board of Directors. Routine business. I'll keep it at that. There you go, Rick. Keep it nice and short. Okay, that's all. That is all I had. Just want to thank our fantastic team of staff members here at the City of Willows, once again, all the way across the board. We're blessed with a dedicated, solid, intelligent team of personnel who are carrying out the goals and wishes of the council on a daily basis. And thank you for all of your efforts and your hard work and your professionalism. And with that, item 9C, City Manager's Report. Marty.
Very quickly, I just want to remind everybody that we have a town hall meeting tomorrow night, not tomorrow night, I take that back, Thursday night. Thursday night, September 12th, to discuss the status of the city's general fund and Measure I, the 1.5% sales tax that's on the November ballot. That will be at the Arc Christian Center. Thank you, Jason, for allowing us to have a meeting like this in a different venue than the one that we spend so much time in here at. And that will start, doors will open at 5:30 with reception, light refreshments. The discussion and Q&A will start at 6 o'clock. And that is at 222 North Butte Street here in Willows. And the other thing I wanted to remind you about is the following Thursday on the 19th, we have another event, which will be the City Crawl from 4:30 to 7:30. And that's Thursday, the 19th. And it's replicating an event that we held 2 years ago. We'll get your city passport, go see our city facilities, starting at the wastewater treatment plant to the corporation yard, the fire station, and City Hall. We'll start with, you know, some non-alcoholic mudslides and lemon drops at the wastewater treatment plant, and then appetizers at the courtyard. And then we'll have hot dogs and hamburgers at the fire station and dessert here at City Hall. The raffle, you take your passport and get a stamp at each of the 4 locations, put it into the raffle drum, and we'll hold the raffle at 7 o'clock. We've got probably over 20 raffle prizes at this point. There's also going to be wild things, furry, scaly animals meet and greet with. West Coast Falconry will be here with some wild raptors. Well, they're not that wild because obviously they've got them on their arm, but you know what I mean. Face painting, magician. I feel like there's, dunk tank. So there'll be a water slide, a great opportunity to dunk some of your favorite or least favorite public officials. I know it's going to be an opportunity no one is going to want to miss. And it's a great chance to see all of our city facilities, our equipment, vehicles, and get a little bit more of a sense of how city operations really run.
So Marty, are you going to be sitting on the
Dunk
dunk tank?
I am going to be because I'm thinking it might actually, maybe we'll put that in the press release. Maybe we'll
Sell
get more
tickets.
people.
Sell
Certainly
tickets.
for Councilmember Sprague will come. He wouldn't want to miss that opportunity, I'm sure. So.
Very good.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
So Marty, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, absolutely.
Rough idea of how the town hall might go based on your experience? I mean, I'm just kind of wondering how it goes. I mean,
Well, I think it'll be extremely robust dialogue and discussion about the city's general fund and the sales tax. I think that it's helpful that we're going to be starting with a presentation that will probably be about 15 minutes just to sort of lay the groundwork and hopefully give people some answers in advance that maybe they thought they had questions for, but maybe we can give them proactively some answers. But I'm sure it'll also stir more questions and people will have more that they'll want to talk about. I don't doubt that at least one or two or few people will bring up the relationship between the sewage fund and the general fund. And, you know, Thursday night's meeting, sorry, I keep saying that, is really about the status of the general fund because that's really what's at risk here and what is in really dire circumstances for the city of Willows. It's not the sewage fund really has nothing to do with the general fund at this point and how it operates. However, I am fully aware, and I hear it on a very regular basis, the alleged interconnection between the two funds and the potential or alleged misappropriation of funds. And I can assure you that on my watch, that's never happened, and I have found absolutely no evidence that there is any misappropriation from the sewage fund to the general fund. But I'm sure it'll come up on Thursday night.
and you'll have answers.
I'll have some answers, but I also don't want to derail the conversation from the status of the general fund and the sales tax, because this is actually the only planned town hall meeting before the election. So, you know, I mean, maybe we'll come away and we'll say we should do 3 more of these or take the show on the road. I don't know, and go to different locations. Who knows? But that'll give you, I've seen lots and lots of town hall meetings and they go in lots of different directions. It depends on your audience.
We have a good MC, don't
We do. He's excellent.
we? We should use him. He's an eloquent speaker.
There you go.
All right.
Well, right now it's Councilmember Thomas has been invited by the Financial Sustainability Advisory Committee, FSAC, to MC the event and make opening remarks, especially since he is officially the only person on the council who is not running for reelection.
Good. Mark. Thank you. Good report. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Moving on to item 10, adjournment. Time is 8:47 PM. Thank you very much for attending tonight and meeting adjourned. Have a great rest of the week.
Yeah.